Well, welcome everyone. I'm Sarah Milne. I'm with Grey Bruce Public Health, and I'm the project lead or program lead for physical activity, and I do a little bit of work in concussions and sun safety as well. And part of our plan is to support physical literacy in the early years. And I've invited Dawn to join us today. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but just before I do that, I've got a couple housekeeping things. And then I'll start with a land acknowledgement. So housekeeping, the Q&A is up for people who don't have the chat option, so you can always add things in there. I've just asked people to maybe highlight, if they can, where they're calling from or joining us from. And then there is the chat as well. I think so. We'll have Dawn do her presentation. We'll go through some of the resources. We'll do open it up for questions at the end. And I think that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the land acknowledgement.
2 seconds. Let me call up my beautiful photo. There you go.
Oh, yeah. Lovely. Thank you. So as I said earlier, I'm in Meaford and I'm on the shores of Georgian Bay. So I'm very fortunate to be on the land, and I'm grateful for the opportunities that I have to spend time with it. I grew up in Owen Sound and I call Meaford my home now. But I'm calling you or speaking to you from the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of the three fires known as the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. And we recognize and thank the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nishinaming as the traditional keepers of this land and water. So we recognize the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation here as well. So thank you for joining us today.
And I will let you know that I'm speaking about an hour northwest of Calgary, Alberta. So these are the traditional lands of Treaty 7 peoples, Blackfoot and Plains Cree peoples, and also Métis Region 3.
Wonderful.
So my name is Dawn Clark. I have been working in the field of early childhood education for children up to about age 8 or 9. This September marked my 50th year working in this field. So that gives you a sense of the depth of what I've been working on for the past 15 years or so, have really been focusing on early years physical literacy and active play. And that grew out of my passion. If I had been 20 years younger when I discovered this passion, I would have changed my field. But discovering the research that's coming out of Harvard's Center on the Developing Child that was picked up here in Alberta on early brain development and the core story. So through the core story and early brain development, have come to appreciate the incredible role that active play and physical literacy plays in holistic child development. So I don't have access to the chat, so hopefully most of you do. If you don't, post it in the Q&A. But I'm really curious about why you're attending this webinar and why, even though it didn't work last week when there was a PD day, you've come back again this Thursday in your evening. And so I've given you some options. Were you interested in how active play can make your day better? Are you wanting to know how to make better use of your time outdoors, how you can have more active play indoors, how you can encourage children and families to be more active? What else did you have in mind when you decided to not only register, but to come back a second night for the webinar? Just type into the chat or in the Q&A, whatever you have available to you.
And I'll keep an eye on it and see what comes up. I'm worried that a few people don't have access to it. And again, you can use the Q&A to share as well. I believe you can.
So we're looking for whether you're looking at how you can make your own day better, whether you're more concerned about outdoors, indoors, working together with children and families to be more active, or any other ideas you had for wanting to attend.
Well, Cassidy is an ECE student at Niagara College, so I'm going to assume that might be some professional development. That she be the reason why she is attending.
Ah, yes, I taught ECE at Mount Royal University. Guess I never, yeah. I used to teach ECE and then child studies at Mount Royal University for
Oh, wow.
many years. And when I retired, I'm now professor emerita in the Department of Child Studies and Social Work. So,
I think I saw that in some of your work, actually. Oh, and yeah.
All right.
Right.
Shall we carry on, Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing more
So
right now.
I have 3 photos up here of children between 18 and about 26 months, so toddlers. And I'd like you to take a look at these photos. So the one on the left is a little 2-year-old. And if you look really closely at his face, you will notice that there are speckles of mud all over this little one's face. He's dressed in rain gear. He's got a rain jacket, rain pants, and rubber boots. But this was his first exploration that if he stomped or jumped or ran through a mud puddle, he could splash me, his other educators, his friends, and himself. And look at that look of joy on his face that he's actually managed to splash all the way to the very top of his little body. The 2 in the middle have discovered the joy of rhythm sticks in a rhythm band. And look at the little one on the right. Her entire body is moving as she's experiencing this joy of hitting the sticks together, wiggling her body to the rhythm. The smiles, the engagement with making noise. And the little one on the right, can't you just see? This is the moment where he's just about ready to put all of his weight on his feet. And he's going to get ready to stand up because he's climbed onto the top of this stump all by himself. He's finding his balance and he's getting ready to stand up. So if we look at these 3, how can this make your day better? Allowing children to get a little messy, allowing children to make noise indoors, allowing children to take a risk. When you can say yes, when you can find your yes and allow these kinds of activities to happen, how does that make your day better? So in all of the work that we've done with physical literacy and active play, we know that, and all early childhood educators know this, we know that children learn through play. We know that children need and want to be physically active, and we see that when we're asking children to sit still during story time, or to sit on their chair at snack time or lunchtime, to stop wiggling when they're standing at the table to do artwork. They're showing us by their little wiggling bodies that they absolutely need to be physically active throughout the day. We know that active play develops all areas of early development, the cognitive and language portion. As children are playing actively, they need to talk and negotiate. They need to address different situations that are happening when they're playing together. They develop their social skills. Will you play with me? Look can you help me build what I'm building with my blocks? Emotional. We know that if children develop the self-regulation to be able to control their impulses, to be able to plan ahead, that they're more welcome in play with other children. And obviously, active play develops the physical literacy. And we also know that learning to love movement in the early years can lead to an active, healthy life. But as educators, there are so many things that we're told that are important for children to do, to have, to experience. Like we're constantly trying to fit into our very busy day with children things that we're told will be good or important for children. But what about you? So my research team and I conducted a physical literacy proof of concept study in childcare settings. We finished it in 2020. We were collecting final data in March of 2020, and that should ring a big red bell for you, as that was the month when childcare centers were closing as a result of the pandemic across the countryside. And in this study, we had asked the educators about the benefits that they saw for children in those areas of development: cognitive, language, social, emotional, physical. We'd asked them about the changes in their own practice as a result of participating in the study, and the intervention and mentorship and resources that we provided for the study participants. But as they were completing the final online surveys, seeing as how we couldn't go visit them, they kept telling us that physical literacy had actually changed them, not just their practice, but them. And they referred to active play as finding their joy. So if you look in the middle brown box on the left, one educator said, instead of saying don't, or no, or stop, I can now say, can you show me again how you did that? So think of that little one standing on the top of the stump or getting ready to stand. And instead of saying, no, don't do that, the educator's standing close by and saying, I'm watching you. I'm here if you need some help. Show me what you can do. Can you stand up straight and tall? And because of that, the educators talked about becoming a believer in the power of movement and playfulness, not only for the children, but for themselves. And they found when they engaged in movement and playfulness with the children, instead of being this supervisor who's always saying, no, don't, you can't do that, stop, the relationships with the children have grown stronger. The children saw them as true co-players, as it talks about in your document, How Does Learning Happen? Being true co-players, co-learners with the children, and the relationships grew stronger. And not only that, we found that relationships then between the children improved, between children and educator improved, and between educator and parent improved, because the children went home more calm, more focused, more excited, and more ready to make that separation transition in the morning. And that was because active play better meets all the needs of children, or the needs of all children, regardless of what those needs might be. And as a result of meeting those needs, the children's behaviors were calmer and smoother. And so instead of dealing with redirection and various guidance issues, the educators found that they had more time to play and to laugh with the children, and it made their day better as well. And then one educator actually extended that and said, I enjoy participating because it gives me my moments of imagination, creativity, thought processing, and release of energy. So for that educator, the opportunity to be more active with the children, to be more playful, increased her imagination and her thinking about how to plan for tomorrow. What other materials and equipment could she put out? What other provocations should she include? So her own imagination, creativity, and thought processing were improved as she became more active along with the children. So I'm going to play you a video. I'm going to show you 4 or 5 videos. We'll watch our time. They're only 1 minute long, each of them. And these videos are part of a project that I have been working on, my team and I have been working on with Active for Life. And the joy for me of this project was that I got to travel to childcare centers across Canada. I had spoken to the educators before the videographer and I arrived, and I just said to them, please show us the things that are most fun for you and your children. What gets your children most excited to play? And so this particular video was taken in Edmonton. I'll show you the playground that the center has in a little bit, but this is just a green area, a half a block away from the childcare center. Children right from infants, and in Alberta, we don't have junior kindergarten, so the children are from 12 months old to 6 years old before they go into kindergarten. And they walk past an office tower past the parking lot to this small green space. And I want you to watch the educators playing with the children outdoors in a green space. And we have video of the children right from 12 months old up to 5 and 6 years old. Now, I didn't ask the director to ensure that her educators were active. I just said, show us what you love to do with the children. And taking the children out of their center, the little ones, there are a couple where the half block walk is a bit of a challenge, so they pull them in a wagon. But they go over to that space almost every single day. And you could see how the children played in that space differently depending on their age. The tiny infants were learning how to walk on uneven ground, on the grass, going uphill and downhill. You also probably noticed that because it's hard to set boundaries with children who are 12 and 14 months old, they were doing a lot of keeping away from the water because the water isn't fenced. But the older children know that they can't cross that sidewalk. And so they're running and rolling and jumping. And the 3-year-olds are jumping off the boulder, but the 4 and 5-year-olds off the retaining wall. And that retaining wall gets higher and higher because the hill drops down. So they start at 2 feet, and some of them are jumping off 4 and 5 feet. And I don't know if you noticed, you could see the hand and the foot of the educator who was right there. But the children go as far along that retaining wall as they want to and feel comfortable jumping. And the one thing that I love about that one, there's an image of a little girl going into the woods. The woods, I'm putting air quotes around it, is about 20 feet by maybe 15 feet deep. It's a few trees and bushes. But the children in the summer, when the leaves are on, can actually get lost in that space. And I don't know if you noticed the educator who was going up, paralleling the child up the other side of the woods, and they were going to meet at the top. But an aspect of risky play, this idea of being able to get lost. And so these children were perfectly safe because there were lots of educators around them, but they could get lost in the trees. I'm going to show you a few more videos like this one as we go through this workshop. So we talk a lot about physical literacy generally, and that's where we started when Margaret Whitehead, the philosopher in the UK, developed the term physical literacy. And for her, she wanted to use the term literacy because she wanted it to be as important for parents, for educators, to think about the importance of physical literacy as it is to talk about literacy as we normally think of it, reading and writing and speaking, or numeracy, learning our numbers, whatnot, musical literacy, do, re, mi, and so on, financial literacy we're now talking about. She wanted it to be as important, physical literacy, as any of those other literacies. But of course, we found it's often a difficult concept for educators and families to wrap their heads around because we're so tuned into the other literacies that we've talked about for children for years. So we've started to use active play as an introduction into this. So active play allows children to move as they want and need to. But physical literacy is developed when children learn the ABCs of movement. They develop the skills or the confidence, they develop some competence, and from that, they develop this love of movement. And as they love movement, they move more, they develop more skills, which builds their confidence, and the circle just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But what are the ABCs of physical literacy? There are many, many types of movement. And for most of us, we're starting to categorize them into three general categories. And I'll talk about those throughout. But generally, one category has to do with balance and stability. It's really the very first literacy or fundamental movement skill that children work on from their tummy time when they develop the core strength and can lift their faces up out of the carpet or the mat that they're laying on, to being able to sit up with balance, to eventually standing up. And then comes locomotion and agility, the ability to run, to jump, to climb, all of those things, the wheeled parts of locomotion, riding bikes, scooters, skateboards, skis, skates, all of those things come under locomotion and agility. But they all depend on the fundamental of balance and stability. You can't stand up on skates or ride a bike until you've got a sense of balance and stability. And the final one is the idea of object manipulation, throwing, catching, kicking, and using things in our hand, mallets, rackets, hockey sticks, etc., to manipulate objects. So we generally talk about those three categories: balance and agility, that's the A, even though it starts with B. B is locomotion and agility, and C being object manipulation. So if you look at those three: love of movement, skills, and confidence. Many years ago, about 15 years ago, a colleague and I were coming back from a physical literacy summit, and the whole focus on the early years really hadn't started yet. It was still very much physical literacy in schools for teens into sports, the long-term athlete development model that some of you may be familiar with. And my colleague and I had gone down to talk about the work we were doing with children before they go to school, so the early years. And we discovered that the focus of much of the physical literacy at that time was on the need to be able to teach children how to throw properly, for example. So the vinyl circles on the floor, take your step forward, your elbows up by your shoulder, your hand is by your ear, you twist your body, you take a step forward and you throw. And we could just see that early childhood educators, the majority of them would say, well, I can't do physical literacy. I don't know how to throw. I throw like a girl. And we were really worried that that would turn people off just approaching this idea of loving to move, developing the confidence to move, and then the competence. So we created this little model, this little theoretical model. This is version 2. Active play and physical literacy every day, to stand for the, makes the acronym APPLE model. And we put around the skin of the apple, so the core is physical literacy, the skin are things that all early childhood educators understand when they're working with children, that the environment, whether it's indoors or out, is crucial. It's the third teacher, that children learn through play, and play means exploration. It involves practice to mastery. It's always joyful. It's child-led. That when the adults engage through modeling, providing active, engaged supervision, participation in the active play, then that leads to the relationships and the strength of relationships. So in our study, the proof of concept study, one of the educators wrote an article about how she used the Apple model to help inform her families what she was doing. She taught infants, 12 months to 18 months. And she was trying to help her families understand what she was doing with the activities, both indoors and outdoors, and how she was encouraging what she referred to as adventurous play rather than risky play, because being a 12-month-old and learning to move is risky enough. So I've provided the link on this slide, but have also provided a resources page that provides all the links that I've mentioned throughout. So let's talk about play, and let's look at indoor play and planned activity times. So Often in indoor play, structured play, the adult-led, the adult-planned type of play is what we tend to see most often indoors. So things like dancing, which is incredibly popular with children right from the time they can begin to wiggle from a sitting position. Yoga, active stories, obstacle courses. So what I've shown here are two posters that were done by a colleague in Chatham, Kent. She's in the Early On program in Chatham, Kent. And she and I worked together for a couple of years. She's produced 6 posters. This is an example of 2 of them. This was a project through Sport for Life. They're in the process of being translated and they will be available on their website soon. But here she's listed some of her favorite books. Being Early On, she really focuses on literacy as well as physical literacy. So how can you combine the two and use books in action? So things like Eric Carle, Brown Bear, What Do You See? Or From Head to Toe, or Going on a Bear Hunt, or I love the Sandra Boynton's Barnyard Dance. So the books that allow children to get up and move and act and simulate. She also does a lot of work with yoga. So she's created a poster on using itsy bitsy yoga. And the photo on the left is another video I won't show you, but it's on the website I'll show you, of an indoor obstacle course. So these are sort of planned activity breaks for the children. But there's also ways of providing nudges, activity centers, or active transition, unstructured play in your playroom with children. So the first one that we focused on, Sylvie in Chatham, Kent, Sylvie St. Pierre, was the transitions. How many times children have to line up and wait to come in from the playground, to go to the washroom, to wash their hands, to go to lunch, to go down the hallway to where their cubbies are or whatever. And so we talked about how to make those transition times more active. So again, this is one of Sylvie's posters on the left. Music that she would use, high fives. You can see the high fives on the wall there. You see the vinyl hands that are stuck on the wall. And for some of the children, that would be quite a jump. And you might want to put some of them a little bit higher so that older children have to jump. 1 step, 2 step, what do you see on the floor? Can you jump on those mud splats on the floor? Or you can see that sometimes they're handprints and sometimes they're footprints on the floor. So children are trying to figure, just like that twister game some of us used to play years ago, fitting their feet on the vinyl and their hands on others. Red light, green light, follow the leader, all of those down the hallway or in any form of transition. These two are, again, they're from the educator who wrote the How She Used the Apple model. So these are all children 12 to 18 months. She just had a sheet in the Imagination Center for these children. And this is what they ended up doing with it one day, is just one pulling another one around like they were on a sled. And notice on the floor underneath that there's painter's tape on the floor. And she's brought her wheeled toys in because it's winter time. And so the children missed their wheeled toys. And so she's put painter's tape on the floor to encourage the children to use the wheeled toys, but to stay in the roadway or to stay on the lines. And another one is just, using cones, taping the hula hoop to cones and taping streamers. And that became the car wash. They'd read a book about the scary car wash. And so this became the car wash in her room. We spend so much time in our playrooms making sure that our art center or our block or our book center are constantly changing and encouraging children to use their curiosity. But we rarely, if ever, at least that I have seen, have centers in the playroom where children are encouraged to be active. And if there are active centers in the room, they often don't change with the same frequency as the other learning centers in a playroom do. And they could. So this is another video. This is one of the 3 fundamental movement skills, the third one: balance and stability, locomotion and agility, and object manipulation. These are primarily 2- and 3-year-old children Most of this footage is taken in early on centers in Mississauga. And then there's a couple of others from other locations around Ontario. And I believe there's even an Edmonton footage in here. But I just want you to take a look. We often don't think of things like throwing, catching, kicking being something that we can do inside. That's something we do outside. But this object manipulation, I think, will show you some pretty simple ideas for how you can encourage throwing, kicking, catching, striking indoors as well as outdoors. So the huge room that you're going to see at the beginning is the Early On Center in Mississauga. And a couple of things there. The grandfather at the end, that was at the Early On Center in Mississauga when they went outside to play. And I just thought it was wonderful to have a grandpa with his grandson showing him how to drop the beanbag in the basket. I loved that clip. You'll also notice the educator with the scarves at one point. That's Sylvie St. Pierre, who did the posters that I've shown you. But very simple things like in the childcare center with the kicking, with the empty coffee cans. Bean bags used everywhere for throwing and catching and throwing through hoops. Very simple kinds of materials that enable your children to be able to participate in object manipulation indoors as well as outdoors. Now looking at outside, so these are 4 different playgrounds or natural areas where we were able to video. So the one in the top left, pardon me, the one in the snow, this is a play school, it's called, in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, January, -25, 10 o'clock in the morning. We had 2 hours to film outside because they only have 3 hours of daylight in the middle of January. So there is one of the videos that I'll show you. We won't see this video, but it's on the website. I'll show you with outdoor play in the wintertime, a more typical traditional type of playground. Underneath this natural-based playground, beautiful, there's 2 of them in 2 different childcare centers in Revelstoke, BC, right in the interior. You can see the mountains around. A full-time population of 8,500, a seasonal population of 20,000. And they have 2 childcare centers. Both of them have really been working on developing their natural playgrounds. And we have 3 videos that will highlight those playgrounds. The Loose Parts Playground, that's connected to the natural area, the one at the bottom left, the video we already saw. But this is what the playground looks like the childcare center at the top. And I'll show you some close-up pictures of these playgrounds, but there's so many places, so many ways of taking your space outside and making it a treasure for children. So here's the Revelstoke Childcare Society. This particular playground is in a school playground, so they have quite a large area. The school has been decommissioned. They have their early learning program in part of it and their childcare center in the other part of it. But notice that everything is made of wood. The only thing that the educator, or that Linda, the director of the center, said was expensive was the shelter, because of huge beams, and they're concreted in, and the beams were expensive. But if you look at everything else, it's the ends of logs, um, logs used everywhere, spools from cable, from wire that they were just given. Notice the teeter-totter, a long plank just over a log. The area in there is all bark chips, wood chips. Um, and you'll see something poking out underneath the shelter. And I've got a close-up picture to show you what that is, because it blows me away. There it is on the bottom left. That is a tree. And as they were building this playground, the landscaper of the playground looked over, and there was another landscaper at the house just right across the road taking down this old dead tree. And so the playground builder went over and said, "Could we have your tree?" And so he hauled the tree over, chopped all the branches off, which are the bottom parts, like turned the tree upside down and embedded it. He built a hill. So this is actually a little bit of a hill, built a hill to embed this tree. And it has become the absolute favorite playground part for the one childcare center. The other one you see at the top left, and also in a school. This is an active school, so there are children in this school as well as community hubs in that school as well. And so the playground area that they have is much smaller. You'll notice it on a hill, and the fence is just behind those tall trees on the right. But again, notice what they've been able to do with log ends and a bridge that wobbles. And in the back is a structure. They climb up the logs, but then there's a net that they have to climb through. So Revelstoke and Childcare Society, Linda Chell, was interviewed for an article in Active for Life, and there's the link. And again, you'll find the link on the resources page. There's also a fantastic playground in Hamilton at the Boys and Girls Club there that's for infants from 3 months to a year old, like tiny babies in a natural playground, which I just loved it. So here's our playground in Edmonton. And I remember looking at it and thinking, oh my gosh, the director was so excited. This was a purpose-built building and a planned playground. It's all rubber that's been painted those different colors, except for the AstroTurf on this end. But you'll notice the two large sheds at the end. And the director said that she had spent so many years with playgrounds with fixed play structures, where educators opened the door, shooed the kids out the door, then leaned against the wall of the center with a coffee in one hand and watched the children playing in the fixed play structure. That can't happen here. Those two sheds are full of loose parts. And every time a group of children comes out onto this playground, they create their own wonderland, pulling out the loose parts that they want from those sheds and deciding what they want to do with them. And we do have a video on the website I'll show you later. I'm not going to show you tonight, but the video is called Pop-Up Playground. I would have preferred that the title was Loose Parts Playground, but that's all right. The thing with this playground is that every season, the playground becomes something new. I didn't have any spring pictures that I could show that without children's faces, but in the spring they have big, like the standing raised vegetable and flower beds, and each classroom of children has their own flower bed. They decide what vegetables they want to grow in it, what flowers they would like to grow. They tend and nurture their flower and vegetable beds. They water them. It's their responsibility to water them. And then in the fall, they harvest and eat their harvest. In the summertime, this space becomes a splash park. And everything that they pull out has to do with water hoses, buckets of water, sprayers of water, sprinklers, and the children, the families know the children are going to be outside as long as the weather's okay, and they're going to be in a splash park. They put up a couple of tent structures so the children can play more quietly inside under a shelter if it's hot, and they have ball runs with water under the shelters. In the fall, they bring in, these ones are artificial leaves, but they also ask the families to bring in, when they're raking up their leaves in the fall, they ask the families to bring in their leaves, and they jump in the leaves, and they rake the leaves, and they crush the leaves, and they gather their favorite leaves and take them inside for arts and crafts. And in the winter, lots of snow in Edmonton, and rather than shoveling the playground clear, they shovel up piles of snow. The children create forts with the snow. They're allowed to make snowballs and throw them at targets. I also had a picture, but again, with faces of children, so I couldn't show it, but the children are sitting facing each other across what looks like a hole, and they've got those metallic fishing rods, you know, with there's a little metal at the end of the rod, and you dip it in and you pull out a fish that's got a magnet on it. The children were ice fishing because they'd been reading stories about how to fish in the winter, and fishing with my grandpa on the ice and other stories like that. So it becomes a playground where families contribute items, and the children and the staff together create the play every single day. There's no opportunity to not be engaged as an educator in the play of the children. And this is the center that also walks the half block to the nature area. So they get their loose parts play, and they get their nature play every single day. Beyond the playground, I love this art project on the right. The idea of painting, or in this case, it's a crayon, over the texture of the bark. I love that piece. So also on the resources page, there's a whole page of posters that Active for Life has put up. And so they have a series of scavenger hunts, one for every season. And I love this idea of, for your younger children, they're not going to be able to read this or perhaps even use the pictures. But even if you as an educator go out with a scavenger hunt. So why is an evergreen different from a deciduous tree? You know, you can shake a deciduous tree and the snow will fall off on your head. On an evergreen tree, you have to shake the branches. Can you make a snow angel? Can you hop like a hare, prance like a reindeer? Can you jump over a stick on the snow? Can you find animal tracks? Can you stand on one leg like a tree? Can you stomp like a Sasquatch, or crawl like a bear? Waddle like a penguin. That's what we need to teach children, to walk across icy surfaces. Can you find winter berries or rose hips? And then there's the outdoor sensory scavenger hunt, which I love because it's a time to be a little quieter, to think about their bodies, to walk barefoot somewhere, to smell, to touch something bumpy or hug a tree, to feel the sunshine, to roll on the grass. Who has seen the wind? Can you feel it? Looking for spider webs. Just this idea of slowing down, looking around you, feeling around you. And so the link for these posters is on the resources page at the end of the webinar. So we've talked about environments. Now let's move to play, the second part of the skin of the apple. And play is exploration. And you talk about provocations in early childhood. Children are curious. They want to problem solve. They want to make decisions. But children, right from the time that they're infants and toddlers, they need to practice and practice and practice. That leads to mastery. But once they've developed that mastery, they want to move on to something else. So that's the key when we're planning what our environment looks like and encouraging play. We need to have an environment set up long enough so that children can practice and practice until they've mastered. And then using observation, the key skill that educators need, we need to figure out how to make that activity more difficult, or how to change it so that it adds another little tweak to it, so that they don't get bored. And often what I find in outdoor play spaces is that children practice, practice, practice. They've mastered, they're bored, but the environment doesn't change. So how do we work on creating an environment that changes, just like that loose parts playground, where the children create a new environment every time they go out? And if they want to master like these blocks and cones, they can choose to bring those out every day until they've mastered them and they want to move on to something else. But it needs to be the opportunity to change the outdoor environment. And so many playgrounds that I visit across the country, very little changes in the playground. And when play is joyful in this way, that's when the children develop the confidence, the competence. They figure out how to move and roll and jump and climb. It builds their confidence, and then they're ready to explore some more. And that leads to the joy and love of movement. So this particular video was filmed in Revelstoke in the natural playground, in both of them. It involves a mud kitchen because I think more and more people are putting mud kitchens out in their playgrounds. They're fairly cheap to build, almost free to equip with old pots and pans and muffin tins and whatnot that families have at home that they don't use anymore. All of these mud kitchens that you'll see in this video do add the element of water. They've got a rain barrel beside every mud kitchen. If there's not enough rain to fill the rain barrel, then they run the hose, and there's a little spigot at the bottom, and you'll see how the children use the spigot. But I also want you to look, as you're watching this particular video, at what else is available to the children in the mud kitchen. And you'll see children, it's a multi-age group when they come out to play, because it's one playground and the children are out. The day that we filmed in Revelstoke, the children were out all day. Lunch was served outside. The infants went indoors to nap. Art was brought outside, Play-Doh, Lego, books, everything was brought outside, and the children were outside all day. So it's really important that the environment is rich and encourages the play. So I want you to watch Mud Kitchen in Natural Playgrounds in Revelstoke. Couple things there that I hope you caught. Watching the little fellow trying to fill up a wicker basket from the spigot on the rain barrel, and how he realized that, it wasn't filling up. And when he moved it, he noticed that he was standing in mud because the wicker basket leaked, and now there was mud at the bottom of the spigot, and he traded it for a tin. That I love. You'll notice all the fresh flowers. They were just brought in that morning by one of the educators who was trimming some of her bushes at home, and the different things that created. All of the utensils, the squeezy bottle for bubbles, everything that just allowed the children to play. And it was interesting. The videographer, I worked with two videographers, and both of them were young men, no children. And the first one, when we'd finished our full day outside in Revelstoke, and Ryan said, I didn't see anybody throw a tantrum. I didn't see anybody get into an argument or a fight. Like, nobody was fussed. all day long. He says, I've never seen that. We eventually stopped at 4 o'clock when his battery overheated. And he was saying, I would never have thought that children could just play outdoors all day and have everything they needed. And so I think that's part of what we want to look at here with active play as well. Now to the third part of the apple. This is a busy slide and I apologize for that, but engagement being your role. So on the left, we talk about active engaged supervision. Well, of course, observing is key. And I know particularly when you're outside, you need to make sure that you've got your eyes on all the children that are outside, or at least the 8 or whatever are your key children. You need to keep your eyes on the children. But more than just keeping your eyes on the children, we've talked about observing their interests, and we do that indoors, but I don't see as much of that happening outdoors. Role modeling, running up and down the hills that we saw in the nature video, engaging the children in different things that maybe they hadn't thought of, encouraging and supporting, scaffolding, being close by for those when they're trying something that might be a little bit risky, and this idea of co-learning and co-playing. And the picture at the bottom I had to include because this was the photo that the educator who said, I found if I don't say don't, my day is so much better when I can ask, how did you do that again? So she had found herself, this group is again the 12 to 18 months old. This is in Revelstoke before they got all their beautiful natural playground built up. And she said she spent most of her time standing outside by the chain link fence and saying, don't climb. No, you can't climb. Stop climbing. So as part of her role in the study, she said, okay, I was going to stop saying don't. I said, yep, you can climb. And look at the different levels that the children are climbing. Some of them still have their feet on the ground. Some of them have all their feet up. One is much higher than the other. And what she found she was doing was standing close, encouraging and supporting. She was scaffolding by saying, now, reach your hands up first. Make sure you've got a good hold on the chain link fence. When you move your feet, make sure you can poke your toes into the holes in the fence so that you can hold yourself. And the most important thing she found with this was that children who went up needed to come down by themselves. And that's often where the scaffolding and the encouraging, supporting came. Because if you let children climb, and especially when they climb trees and they get up there and say, I can't come down, come take me down. If you take them down, one, they've lost their confidence. And two, they haven't learned how to get themselves out of a situation that it's extended their comfort zones. So by standing close, by teaching them how to step down, holding on to them if they need to, but ensuring that they figure out how to come down means that you're not going to turn your back and find somebody higher than they should be in some piece of equipment, the fence, the tree, the whatever, that they've learned if they're going to go up, they have to come down, and you've helped them learn that. You've helped them with that coping strategy. So as I say, we talk about adventurous play with very young children. I know all the research is risky play. I know it's okay to use the term risky play in Ontario. Our Canadian guru around risky play is at UBC and BC. But in Alberta, we're not allowed to use the term risky play. Our Alberta Health Services says that all play is inherently risky. Why would you tell parents that you're making it even riskier? And they've got a point. So we just use the term adventurous. And here are some of the things that when children are encouraged to climb, to push their own boundaries, to explore possibilities, helps. I think one of the best things I like on this is on the bottom line, second from the right, that children experience success and failure. And finding a lot of our children no longer know how to accept failure. And so this is the executive function skill of planning and changing the plan when it doesn't work. They try something, it doesn't work. So now what are you going to do? What are you going to do next time? How are you going to make it work next time? So that failure isn't a no, I'm never doing this again, that was bad. It's planning and changing the plan when need be. So I'm going to take you back to Revelstoke and show you a video on adventurous play. You may have noticed the children jumping off. You couldn't see, unfortunately, what they were jumping off of, but it was a massive cable reel that they were jumping. They had to climb up on a block and then on a middle-sized cable reel and then up to the top cable reel. So you saw where the children's feet were compared to the educator, right up about her shoulder level, and they were jumping into a sand pit. But that was something that had different levels that they could jump. The spinning, I thought, was so cool. They were old theater curtains that they just sewed together at the bottom to create a little seat, and the children wound themselves up and made themselves super dizzy. Excellent for your inner ear, your vestibular, and believe it or not, not only is that good for balance, but a strong vestibular sense in your inner ear helps children focus better. So again, a link to executive function skills. So here we won't have time, we won't necessarily stop, but if you want to put something in the chat or a question about this, but the fourth part of the skin of the apple is relationships. Relationships among the children, between the children and the educators, with the children, the educators, and the parents. And when we did our study, the relationships was something that really came through. And I've talked to you about how the children were developing their problem solving skills, their self-regulation skills, because their needs were being met. We didn't see what we often see, especially in outdoor playgrounds or in indoor playrooms when children need to wiggle and move and run and jump, where they start niggling at each other, where they push, where accidents happen. And you just didn't see that in any of these videos when the children were being very active and were supported by active, engaged supervisors. But the idea of the relationship between educators and parents, we did some workshops. They of course had to be virtual after everything COVID was shut down, but we wanted to hear from parents about what they saw in their children, because they had given consent to have their children participate in this study, and we wanted to give them some feedback. And so we did short workshops, we presented some of our findings, and we gathered workshops or feedback, pardon me, from the parents. And the parents talked about things like their children were more calm and focused when they came home. They ate supper and they slept better than they did before. That their children were excited to go to childcare in the morning, that transitions in the morning were much easier, especially if the children were already outside and playing. Parents commented that often, regardless of the weather, if the children were outside and playing, then the relationships were better. I was at a childcare center yesterday. So yesterday, day after Halloween, So sleep deprivation, children were up later than usual, and sugar highs. And I was really curious how this particular center was dealing with those things with children. And I got there and all the children were outside. It was about 0 here and there was still snow on the ground. So there were children in their snowsuits. Some of the children were inside the playground. The older children, the 4s and 5s, go out into a big field behind the playground. And so I was asking one of the educators, who was a former student of mine, which is why I chose that center to go. And Miriam had helped me do some research on active play. So she was saying right after their breakfast snack, there were some leftovers. So the children packed up the leftovers. They walked out into the field close to the high school field and started feeding the vast swarm of seagulls who came down to help them finish off their breakfast snack. And after that, they walked over to the skate park because the children learning how to climb up some of the hills and rolls in the skate park in full snow gear, you know, the park is layered up with mitts and snow pants and boots, and then rolling down the hills in the skate park. And then they went and got their sleds, and they were all going sledding. They had been out since 8:45 that morning, and I was there at 11 o'clock. The children happy, running, smiles, rosy cheeks, none of the issues that you would have expected from sleep deprived, the morning after Halloween. And the sleeping rooms were really looking forward to nap time because they knew that their children would nap well after lunch. So I'm going to finish with one more video. This video is the PR video, the promotional video for the website I'm going to show you in a minute. It's called Power of Active Play. And the thing that I particularly love about this video is that every single program that we visited to film is featured at some point in this video. This one's a little bit longer. It's almost 2 minutes.
As educators and caregivers, we want to provide children with the best start in life. Unfortunately, many children today are missing out on an essential part of childhood. With busy family schedules, distractions from technology, and more sedentary lifestyles, many children are not getting enough physical activity. This is where active play comes in. In keeping with natural childhood development, active play is crucial to healthy growth and learning. When children are engaged in playful physical activity, their brains start forming new connections, and with continued play, those connections grow stronger. This is the foundation for healthy cognitive, emotional, social, and physical development. That's why ActivePlay.ca was created. By promoting active play in childcare and early years centers, we can ensure that children have the opportunity for healthy development. Research has already shown that adding active play to daily schedules in childcare and early years centers can result in happier and better behaved children, as well as improved relationships between children and educators. Every child benefits from the magic of play. Let's support our children's growth and development by promoting active play in childcare and early years centers. ActivePlay.ca is here to help you make it happen. Let's bring the magic of active play back into early childhood.
So you will have noticed that you saw some of that footage before, but there was new footage. So with that, we're coming to the end with the resources, and then I'm going to highlight the Active Play website so you can see what's available on that. But everything that I linked to or showed in this webinar is on this resource page, and Sarah's going to send out a PDF format of the slides that I've used, so you will have them and you'll be able to check out all these resources. So Active for Life is the first one. Their main homepage is called activeforlife.com. I showed the posters, the scavenger hunts, the winter scavenger hunt, and the sensory. That's available at this link. You'll notice it's free downloads at posters. And the article about the natural playgrounds, there's the link for that one as well. And then there's some information on the study that I talked about, the physical literacy proof of concept study in childcare settings. It was funded by Active for Life and the I forget the long acronym at the federal government for this particular study. And there's some information there if you look under physical literacy, early childhood, or study physical literacy. Active Play is the website that we're going to talk about a little bit, with videos, posters, articles, and newsletters. My research team, our study is our website is the Early Years Physical Literacy. And there's more information on the proof of concept study and information on the core story of early brain development that I spoke to earlier that led me into Active Play. The Apple model is there, and along with that, there are a series of activities that we used in the proof of concept study, the Apple Seeds activities, and various other resources. And the final website is Sport for Life. And those are the posters, the 6 posters that Sylvie St. Pierre in Chatham, Kent created. There's active transitions, yoga, active books, hula hoops, bean bags, and block play. Those posters are just being translated into French and will be posted soon. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and ask Sarah first to bring up the Active Play website, and then we can move into a Q&A if you wish. So I will stop sharing. And you've got it up already. Look at that. Awesome. So this is the Active Play website, and I've talked a lot about Active Play website. And if you first maybe go to the home page, just to show where the one video that I just showed, there it is, the Why Active Play. That's the video, The Power of Active Play, that I showed you at the end. Now, what we did with this particular project is as I mentioned, I got to travel across Western, Northern, and Central Canada to film the videos that you saw. So, and one special thing that we did, see, when Sarah just holds her cursor, notice that there are 9 different languages that all of the videos have been translated into. So we have 5 international languages: Arabic, Farsi, Simplified Chinese, Tagalog, and Urdu. And those languages were chosen in consultation with the translation company that works with the federal government. We also consulted a number of immigrant serving agencies across Canada and StatsCan. And then we have 3 Indigenous languages: Inuktitut, Ojibwe, and Plains Cree. And those 3 were chosen on the basis of the number of speakers of each of those languages and the areas of Canada that they covered. And if you'll notice, just at the very top right of the screen is French. So the entire website is also available in French, as well as all of those languages for those of you who are bilingual or primarily Francophone. So let's go back to videos, and we'll look at the English videos, if we could, Sarah. Oh, you have to ask it again. Okay, that's all right. And then if you just, so there are a total of 13 videos. So you saw the Adventurous Play. That's the one that we filmed in Revelstoke. You saw snippets of the indoor obstacle course, which was at Edmonton, and the Loose Parts Play was also filmed in Revelstoke at their 2 centers. The next 3, you saw the Mud Kitchen, and you saw the Nature Play in Urban Spaces. What you did not see was how the Edmonton playground uses all of their loose parts and creates a different playground each time they go up. So there's a video there. You only get a very basic view of it because they had taken down their splash park. We filmed in September. It was too cool for the splash park, but the leaves hadn't started falling yet, so they hadn't moved totally into fall. And you notice that you can download each of the videos and you can share each of these videos. So if you want to share them with colleagues, with families, you can be doing that. Now here we begin to look at some of the fundamental movement skills. I showed you the object manipulation one on the far right. The one in the middle is probably the most beautiful video that we did. This is a video taking place in an early on program in Pancourt. It was a bilingual program. Sylvie Saint Pierre did the program. So it was with mums and their infants between 3 months and 9 months old. But just the different things for those of you who do work with young children, very young infants, the kinds of equipment, the way she encouraged children to spend a bit more time on tummy time, the mirror, to me, that's just an absolutely pricelessly beautiful photo of the 3-month-old looking at himself in the mirror, and how she supported the mom in encouraging a little bit more tummy time. There was crawling. There was one little one who moved along on her little butt, and she used her legs to bounce herself forward, and that's how she moved across the floor on her butt. And so again, Sylvie used one of those Regio mirrors, that surround the child, and she sat in there bouncing, watching herself in the front, watching herself behind, watching herself up above, and trying to keep her balance so she didn't fall over. And then you saw in the power of active play, 2 little ones crawling to try and get to the basket first that had the little shakers in them. Locomotion and agility, again, a series of things to help children begin to be more comfortable moving, running, jumping, climbing, wheeled toys, etc. 3 more down the bottom here. We have balance and stability. Again, that's the room in the early on center in Mississauga. Object manipulation, we split ball play out, again, looking specifically at how to use balls indoors and outdoors. And the last 2, the one on the right, this was filmed in Yellowknife in a junior kindergarten program. And the students, the educators in this video are first year early learning and childcare students at Aurora College in Yellowknife. Some of them are Indigenous, as this young lady is, she's Innu, but not all of them are Indigenous. And what they wanted to show us were Northern Indigenous games that can be done with children as young as 3 and 4 years old. And then the last video we also did up there, so the one just down a little bit, Sarah, we really wanted some outdoor play in the winter, and we didn't get snow anywhere in our video sites until too close to Christmas to film. So as I say, we went up to Yellowknife, -25. And when you watch this one with this particular setting, which is in an elementary school, again, without the students, the first year early learning students, but notice that the street lights and the school outdoor lights are on at 10 and 11 in the morning because there was hardly any sunshine. Now, if you come down a little bit further, and you'll see that about right there. If you could click on that, thank you, Sarah. So this explains the project, but to me, the most important thing are the acknowledgements. So coming down a little bit further, I just want to show everybody where we filmed. So Centre Aniva in Pancourt, that was Sylvie's bilingual program. The early on program at Dixie Bloor Neighborhood Center. So that was the large room we saw inside, and the grandfather with his grandson outside. The early on forest program in Wheatley, we don't have a full video of that yet. I'm still working on that, but you'll see some snippets of that in the balancing video, and you also saw it in the Power of Active Play. Thanking the Early Learning and Childcare Program at Aurora College in Yellowknife. Growing Together Family Resource Center in Chatham, Ontario. That was the childcare center with the scarves, and then the outdoor play center with the playground with the tires. Mildred Hall, that was the junior kindergarten program in Yellowknife. Revelstoke Childcare Society, both of their centers, stepping stones and cornerstones. Windmere Early Learning Center in Edmonton, and the Yellowknife Play School. Without their willingness to allow us to come in and spend a day with their program, their enthusiasm about showing us what they most were excited about, their getting consents from parents, they're making sure that children who weren't consented were getting excellent experiences away from where we were filming. Without them, we could not have made this website at all. So I want to make sure that they're thanked, and acknowledged. And then back up to the top, there's a thing at the top that says posters again in all those languages. There are 6 posters here. And these posters are primarily for you to use with your families, to try and explain to families about active play in the early years, why it's so important, and maybe why you're focusing on that in your program. The benefits of outdoor play, again, for families to understand that you're going to spend a significant portion of your day outside every day, even as you can see with the 2 right-hand figures when it's snowing and cold and they're dressed in snowsuits. And the next 2, this one on the left, I really love, how to dress for outdoor play, right from 30 above to 30 below. Hardly any words, even though it's translated into the 7 other languages. But the idea, the importance in Canada of learning how to layer and knowing that the weather's going to change. Wait 15 minutes and it will change. So you need to be prepared for that. A great poster for families, I think. Because we went up north, we really wanted to support the role of Indigenous traditions in active play. And particularly at the bottom, I love that active play builds strong hearts, healthy bodies, and wise spirits. And all of these are available for download as well. Now, if we go down just a little bit, and there's physical literacy, why physical literacy is important throughout our life, regardless of our careers or just simply carrying in groceries and walking on slippery sidewalks, and something about managing screen time that families often struggle with a little bit. Doesn't happen in childcare centers anymore because policies don't allow it, but families still struggle with that. And then if you come down a little bit, the thing I really want to focus on is right here. I know how busy you are. I know that after this webinar, you're going to say, now, what was that website that Dawn talked about? And oh yeah, I forgot, I haven't gone to it. Sign up for a newsletter. We've got a series of 18 newsletters. They'll come into your mailbox once a month. They focus on the videos that we have or the posters that we have, give you a little bit more information, and remind you to go back and check out the videos and the posters.